It's been 10 years since I lost my grandpa, Thaddeus Radwan. I was only 10 years old myself at the time, and as much as I hate to admit it, I feel like some of my memories of him are starting to fade. I would never forgive myself if I completely forgot my grandpa, so I decided to talk to his sister, my great-aunt Genevieve, to learn more about him.
The time I lived in Poland, I was a very little girl that time. And we had beautiful life, and there was no problem, and we were well off, you know. He was a very smart and bright child. He was all over all the time, you know, running around, doing things, even fighting with boys, you know. That was your grandfather.
However, when World War II rolled around, things took a turn for the worse in Poland. My grandpa and his family experienced that firsthand.
Well, the war started so unexpectedly. Poland wasn't prepared at all. And that happened in 1939. Beautiful September morning. We were playing outside, and over the radio we heard, "War, war." We thought that was somebody playing trick on us. And it's not so. They started war. Germans attacked west part of Poland, and Poland tried to defend country, but eventually they had to give up. And bad times started, evacuation and deporting people, especially on east part. We were one of them, deported to Siberia. And it was a very, very hard time there. Grandpa was so little that time. He was 11 years old when war started, you know. And to him, like to the rest of us kids, it was sort of like fun. We didn't realize what war really meant until we experienced bad times. Then we knew what was war all about.
But they were strong, and miraculously, both my grandpa and his sister made it through the war and lived to tell about it.
After the war, we had choice to go back to Poland, to communistic country. That time it was, you know. Or sign up the country you want to go to. So we didn't want to go to Russia again. So we signed up for America because my father had a cousin here and we needed a sponsor in order to get to country.
My grandpa was able to put the war behind him and start a new life in America. Here, he met the love of his life and had 4 children, including the man who I'm named after, my father, Mark.
The first thing I think of when I think about my dad is someone who really felt that family came first, and he really showed it. His love for his family was not only obvious to all of us kids and my mom, his wife, but also to anyone who came in contact with him, whether it was other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, or if it was friends of ours. My dad not only showed that he loved his family, but brought all of them in and made them feel as they were part of the family in some way too. He was the most welcoming person I've ever seen, and everybody just loved my dad. Any of our friends, my brothers, my sister, and just any acquaintance even, just really felt the heartwarming love that he had, and it was just always exhibited through his family. What I remember being the oldest, my dad was still going to school, finishing up his degree at night, and he was working at Ford's as an engineer, doing a lot of overtime work, so he'd work late in the day, he'd work on Saturday mornings, but he always found a way to intertwine family time with everything. For example, I remember as a young kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, he had final exams at Lawrence Tech, so he took me with him, and he gave me an empty blue book, and I just sat there and drew pictures of hockey teams and things like that, their insignias, waiting for him.
At night, he went to school, and he graduated. I forgot the name of it, from Lawrence Tech University, and we were so proud of him. He was already on older side, and I remember as he was graduating, he walked with the youngsters, and your mother says, "My God, he looks so old." I says, "You should be proud of him. You know, he was working, he had children, but he still went to school just to make something out of himself."
On Saturdays, he'd come home from work, he'd take me to the lunch meat store, we'd get our lunch meat, our bread, and we'd go back home, have a big feast for lunch on Saturdays. He'd buy me hockey cards, baseball cards for a nickel or a dime, whatever they were at the time, and just a little something extra to have just for accompanying him. But he really seemed to enjoy having me with him. And then a lot of times when my brother Jim got older, we'd both go with him. And one of the funniest things I can remember is that my dad would go in the store, and sometimes he'd leave us in the car if it was going to be quick, and we'd turn on all the lights, the wipers, the radio, full blast and everything, and he would come in the car and it would just be total chaos for a couple of seconds, and he would just laugh and say, "Oh, you guys got me." We just remember that to this day, and we still laugh about it.
The more I learn about my grandpa, the more I admire and respect him. He was a kind and generous person, and now I know where my dad gets it from.
I always feel like I don't live up to the way my dad helped us growing up. I always feel like I should be doing more for my kids just from the way my dad did so much for us. And not only did he provide for us a great home and a great life, by him working so hard, he allowed my mom to be able to be home for us and do all those types of things. There was always somebody there when you came home, so you never came home to an empty house as you were a kid. My dad always went to all my hockey games, my baseball games. When I was in t-ball, he would be an assistant coach. He always went to my brother's games, my sister's pom-pom, and other activities, dance activities, everything. So he was definitely always there for us. And the nice thing about him going to a lot of my hockey games I can remember is I always had someone that I could talk to about the game after. Some games go great, some games not so great, but you always had someone that you could confide in. If the coach was a little hard on you, he would kind of buck me up and say, "Well, you just have to play better," or if it gets to be too much, then all you can do is your best and not worry about it. And there's a lot of times that, still playing to this day, I go back and think about my dad behind the net, watching the game, biting his fingers and making me laugh sometimes as the play's at the other end and I'm sweeping the crease. And it just was, it's a real comforting feeling to know that you always had someone in your corner for you. He really was a great person to kind of give you a role model. People talk about role models so much this day, but back in the 70s, you didn't really think about a role model. But when I look back at things, it's not so much that he instilled a work ethic by beating you over the head when you had a job, like you need to go to work, you need to work hard, but he really instilled it with the schoolwork, and that was truly the backbone for what I am today. And I really have a great work ethic, and I attribute that to my dad. Not so much that it was anything verbally he told me about working, but watching how hard he worked. He went to school, what he did for his family. So anytime that I have any extra time to do not just work, but to work with the family or to do things for the family, it's never enough, because I always felt that my dad did more than I ever do.